I didn't forget to turn my mic on. All right. Thank you guys all for coming out tonight. We appreciate you joining us. This is our fourth forum of 7. So we're about halfway through the, hopefully if you haven't watched the other 3, you can watch them. You can get to them from our website. This is a joint effort between WHCP, which is who's got all the technology here, which is allowing us to do the recordings and broadcast these live. So we truly appreciate the partnership with those folks and all the effort they're putting into this. The SPY has been working with us. And then in the back, the Midshore Board of Realtors, we relegated them to the back of the room tonight so they could give out cookies and water. But that's the group that's been putting these forums on for you in terms of bringing them forward. I am Bill Christopher with the Chamber of Commerce, for those of you that don't know me, and I am your stand-in moderator for the night. So you guys are going to be working with me as opposed to a professional moderator. So hopefully we'll get through this together. Pretty straightforward event. There's going to be a 2-minute opening statement by each of the candidates. So they'll get 2 minutes to say whatever they want to say to start. Then we'll start a round of questions. Those will be 90 seconds they had to respond to those questions, to answer those. They have all seen the questions. We provided the questions ahead of time, so they had a chance to think about how they want to answer the questions. So these are not necessarily spontaneous, but they are, they had seen them. They may change their answer based on how someone before them answers it or how other questions get answered, but they did have the questions ahead of time. We'll get through those as many as we can. And then about 7:25, we'll do a wrap up where each candidate gets 2 minutes at the end to just kind of summarize anything they didn't feel they get to say during the session or afterwards. So that'll be coming up at the very end. And like I say, this is all being recorded. It's being live streamed as well, but it's all being recorded, and those recordings are available through our website to go out and find those. So with that, we just did a random, for those of you in the room, watch us do that, a random selection. And so for each of you guys, you would introduce yourself as you're doing your 2 minutes in terms of where you're at. We do have candidates from both 37A and 37B here tonight. It was just from a break point, it didn't make sense to try to break those up into 2-1. So we're doing both 37A and 37B at the same time. So if you can say what district you're from as you're introducing yourself. And we will start with Ron in 2 minutes. Ron, good. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm Ron James. I'm from 37B. There are 4 candidates running from 37B, 2 from Wycomico and 2 from Dorchester. We have to elect 1 from each of those parts of the district. I was born here in Cambridge, Maryland, in Dorchester County. I was raised in Federalsburg, Maryland, in Caroline County, which is part of 37B. I now reside in Galestown, where I've been the mayor for 16 years. 37B is pretty well chopped up, but the county is mainly made up of rural areas and small towns, and that's where I'm strongest at, small towns and rural areas. I am in favor of 2 primary things in the Senate or the House of Delegates, and that would be public safety and schools. And by schools, I divide that in 2 issues, school safety and school curriculum. So I'm from here. I know what's going on here. I know people here. I'm a veteran. Don't forget, elect a vet. They say that's good if you go to Annapolis because sometimes it's like a war over there. But you've got to have compromise. And I am one for compromise, but I will not compromise Eastern Shore ways, habits, or the way we live here on the shore. Thank you.
Thank you. Cherie?
Good evening, everyone. I am Cherie Sample Hughes. I am the delegate representing House of Delegates at 37A, which is inclusive of Wycomico and Dorchester counties. I have served in the legislature now for 8 years, and I am a resident of Wycomico County. My husband actually is a Dorchester Countyan, and we have property in both counties and have 2 sons that we've raised here on the Eastern Shore. Did move away for a little while to attend college and to also work for the governor. At that time, it was Glendenning, but then returned and ran for local office. I served on the Wycomico County Council for 8 years and then was able to run for state office. I'm interested and feel as though that I'm committed again and have always been committed to my constituency. And I learned that early on by being a member of the American Legion Junior Girls Auxiliary. And so my family early on instilled in me the necessity to be a part of the community, to give back to your community, but also to see what you can do to improve it. And so I've instilled that in my children as well. Now in the House of Delegates, I serve and have been on the Health and Government Operations Committee. So a lot of times you'll see I'm very strong on health policy, making sure that our elderly as well as our young people and middle age, those issues are addressed through policy. And so to that end, the way I get my legislation mostly is understanding and listening to constituents all throughout the year, and then figuring out how I can then impact that or make that change by passing the policy and getting the legislation done. In Annapolis, it requires you to listen. It requires you to have relationships, because of 141 of us in the House, you can't get anything passed by yourself. And you'll probably hear more of that from Delegate Adams this evening as well. But thank you for having this tonight, and I certainly look forward to additional questions.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hi. Thank you, Bill, for having us, and thank you all for coming. I appreciate you taking your time to come out and learn about the candidates. My name is Nicole Ackley, and I'm running for delegate in 37B. My husband and I moved to the Eastern Shore over 20 years ago, where we have raised our 3 children and made this our home. Prior to taking office, I worked in several capacities as a registered dietitian. I have an undergraduate degree in dietetics from Indiana University and an advanced degree in food and nutrition science from Penn State. I currently serve on the Wicomico County Council, and I represent the largest, most rural area in that county. My committee appointments on the County Council include the Local Health Commission, Behavioral Health Authority, Social Services Board, and most recently I revived the Women's Commission of Wicomico. I currently serve as a commissioner on the Critical Areas Commission for the Chesapeake and Atlantic Bays, and the Maryland Department of Disabilities Assistive Technology Board. The National Association of Counties appointed me to serve as the member of the Human Services and Education Policy Committee. I received the Governor's Award for Volunteer Service in 2017 and President Trump's Volunteer Award Service in 2020. I've served as the president of our local Habitat for Humanity, and I currently serve as the vice president for Parents Place of Maryland, an organization that advocates for children with special education and special health care needs.
Thank you, Nicole. My name is Delegate Chris Adams. I'm a 5th generation Eastern Shoreman. I'm a 3rd generation small business owner. I have 3 children just coming through college now. My wife is a public school teacher in Wicomico County. Back in 2013, I had to fight our state for our company's survival. We had the full weight of Maryland's Department of Labor on our company. We fought them not in the courts, but in the legislature. And as a Republican small business owner, it was an intimidating process, but yielded fruit. We won because the state was treating me guilty and then giving me the opportunity, frankly, to prove my innocence in front of an administrative law judge. That's unconstitutional, and we won law change because of that. I ran in 2014 as a mad business owner and won when Eddie Eckhart ran for state senate. I'm on the House Economic Matters Committee, so the speaker at the time put me on the same committee that I fought our state on because I did it the right way, won the debate on its merits. And for those 8 years in the General Assembly, I've run my business and how we conduct work in Annapolis through the eyes of making sure that my voice has the right to be heard on the House floor and then the committee. That's how we get work done in Annapolis. I'm the treasurer of the Eastern Shore delegation. I'm the chair of the Dorchester County House delegation. I have the most conservative voting record of any sitting delegate or senator on the Eastern Shore, that from the American Conservative Union and CPAC. I'm also endorsed by the Maryland Farm Bureau, and I bring my 8 years of experience to another 4-year term, asking for your vote to demonstrate to you again my ability to make change in Annapolis, fight for key industries, agriculture, and our watermen, and do it in a way that you are proud of what that representation looks like in Annapolis. Thank you for the privilege to put my name forward on the ballot and to ask for your vote this coming July 19th.
Done.
Hi, my name's Donna Bradshaw. This is my first time out in any kind of public forum like this. I'm running for 37A. Let me try to get this right, because boy, that's a weird district. If you look at it on the map, it's a little bit confusing, and I'm probably yet to wrap my head around it. But I truly believe that we should never have an election that's unopposed. We need people to run against each other so we can talk about the issues, so we can really dig in and see what needs to be done, and if there are other ways to do what we need to do. My platform basically is I want to protect our young people from a lot of the things that are coming down the pike in the schools right now. I want to address school safety. The watermen and farmers are key to this area, and of course, public safety and our police officers or our EMS. All of these are struggling, floundering right now, and we've really got to create some legislation to help them out. I appreciate you all being here. I won't be a long talker, you'll find that out, but I do really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope to hear from everybody in the future.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I am Susan Deline Botkin. I'm trying to squeeze years of education and experience into 2 minutes, so I'm reading, which I don't usually do. For the past 25 years, I've been a nationally recognized successful small business owner here on the shore. I have a family health center with over 2,000 patients who come from Talbot, Caroline, Dorchester, Wacomico, and Queen Anne counties. I know how to listen, evaluate, and help resolve problems. My patients are young, old, veterans, teachers, farmers, watermen, engineers, nurses, doctors, employed, retired, and unemployed. In 2016, I was elected to the Talbot County School Board, and now I'm president. In those 6 years, I supported our superintendent and staff in raising our graduation rate from 85% to 96%. We decreased our dropout rates to less than 2%. We have expanded our equity programs and reach out to student families and community. Together, we can accomplish this for the whole shore. In 2018, I was instrumental in guiding a task force to develop county referendum to increase taxes, which nobody wants to do. But it increased the pay and benefits for first responders, particularly the sheriff's office. This stopped the brain drain in county safety that we're having in Talbot. By finding common ground, we got stakeholders buy-in that benefited the whole county. Since the early days of the pandemic, I have been on the Holy Trinity Pandemic Task Force to inform and guide our church to safety. For the past 25 years, I have worked on healthcare, education, environmental legislation in various roles as business owner, president, legislative chair of the Nurse Practitioner Association of Maryland, board member and legislative chair of the Maryland Academy of Advanced Practice Clinician, concerned citizen. I have reached across the legislative aisles to point out the benefits of legislation in healthcare, education, and environment. I have worked well across the board with our congressional delegation governors. Since 2010, I have been on the Oxford Board of Appeals, making sure the comprehensive plan is adhered to and construction projects follow guidelines. My time is up, but my favorite thing actually is being on the Oxford Kids Camp Board and being the director of the parade in Oxford. I get to blow the whistle.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to thank the voters who are here who want to be informed and those that are watching us live on Facebook. My name is Tom Hutchinson. I'm running for the House of Delegates for District 37B. I'm a conservative Republican who believes in a common sense approach to government. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. During the pandemic in 2019, I became a small business owner when I started Hutchinson Home Services, a small home improvement company serving the Midshore. One of the best professional decisions I've ever made in my life, next to running for office. Prior to that, I spent over 25 years in the healthcare analytics industry, where we measured the quality and performance of U.S. hospitals. I had various executive roles in that industry. Today, I reside on the Little Choptank River in Wolford, located in Dorchester County. I became a property owner in 2003, and after realizing the values and lifestyle of the Eastern Shore are consistent with my personal values and beliefs, I decided to move full-time 12 years ago in 2010. I'm the proud father of a 20-year-old daughter, Helen, who is attending the University of Maryland. I'm a former volunteer firefighter, an active community leader, and I'm an aging triathlete. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science from Dickinson College and a master's of business administration from Loyola University of Maryland. And finally, I'm a member of Shore Leadership, class of 2017, the best class ever. I'm running for office because I want to make a beautiful place to live even better. The issues that are most important to me: economic development, job creation, improving public safety and crime reduction, supporting law enforcement and first responders every day unequivocally. Protect small businesses, our farmers, our watermen from burdensome regulations and taxation, and transparency in education. Thank you, and I look forward and ask you for your vote.
And Tom, you can keep the microphone because you were the last one to go. So you're going to get the first question. And it kind of ties into what you were kind of leading into there. You listed several things that were on your agenda, but what would be your top legislative agenda item in Annapolis in 2023?
While this is not a legislative agenda, my first priority would be, when elected, to ensure that I have the staff and the processes in place to provide exceptional constituency services to the residents of District 37B. Now, as for my top legislative agenda items, refunding and supporting law enforcement, improving public safety and reducing crime, and improving our educational system to include the return of traditional educational programs and values, parental transparency in educational curriculum, and protecting the safety of our children. Thank you.
Ron?
Same question?
Same question. Everybody gets to answer this one.
Ditto what he said. Plus, I have some ideas. I mean, in school, we need to start teaching the children reading, writing, and arithmetic. Our students are graduating with no idea of money other than mom and dad give it to me. They can't do a checkbook. They can't do their finances. If they get a credit card, it's overdrawn right away. We need to teach the children basics in our public schools. Again, we need more safety in our public schools. I have some ideas on that. All schools should be locked down. All schools, no exception, should be locked down. Every classroom should be locked in the school. I think we've instigated that policy in Dorchester and Caroline County. Not so sure about Talbot, but that would stop some of the problems in the school. Again, public safety, we have to refund the police and the public servants, even wildlife management officers need some support from us. I've talked to many police departments in all the small towns and all the county police departments. They're none in favor of the legislature that's going into effect on July 1st with a new police board where some citizens are going to justify the police action or justify the citizens' actions against the police. They're all against that. That happened while the incumbent was in office. My first priority is to get rid of that.
Sure, thank you. Just as I said during my 2-minute opening, is that what I have been able to do, and I think is very important, is to, number one, listen. We just came out of session. And so what I do during the interim is take time to hear what the concerns are from my constituents and then work on the policy. And a lot of times the constituents actually help with the policy. And that is a very huge undertaking and a huge task. But couple of things. When we ended the session just recently, there was one bill that I was just really desperately was working on and wanted to make sure passed, dealt with the flooding. And that was our resiliency bill, and making sure that in the state of Maryland that we created an office that would address the flooding. And particularly I wanted it because it was Dorchester County, making sure we address that. And what that does, it provides the Maryland Emergency Management Office with staff to really look in and hone in on these regional issues and figure out how we get that federal funding down here. So that's work to be continued. I also have a study underway dealing with breast cancer right now. That's in the MDH's department. And to also look and meet with the nonprofits in our district that still might need that extra support, those legislative bonds. This particular session, I was able to bring about $4 million back. And so that's money that's necessary and can get back into these communities to get people working, to get the services right here in the community. The Macy's Lane school is still underway as far as working with them for funding. But all of these things are important to our way of life in Dorchester County and Wycomico as well.
Thank you. Nicole, same question.
Thank you. Oh, this will be brief. What is my top legislative agenda? It's addressing the quality of life for all citizens in Caroline, Dorchester, Talbot, and Wycomico. And what does that mean? It means the price of gas. It means the quality of education. It means public safety. It means access to health care. It means local jobs. This is not my agenda. Going into Annapolis with my own agenda is wrong. It's the agenda of the people.
So I serve on Economic Matters Committee. At the end of last year, we had two major bills that came through. They came through in a convoluted way, an unfinished way. One was Senate Bill 275, which was a broad expansion of family medical leave. It was an insurance program. It would be, once fully implemented, as large as our entire unemployment insurance division. This coming year, you could expect me to fight for limiting the scope of that bill, limiting the cost to the taxpayer, the employee, and the employer, and find ways to try to get the private sector into a market. If we're going to offer insurance like this, have the private sector that knows how to do it, not a government agency that will be very difficult at best in trying to implement the law and come through very expensive. The other bill in the committee that was left unfinished was Senate Bill 528, which was the Climate Solutions Bill. Let's be clear, that bill would have banned natural gas use on the Eastern Shore in Baltimore City. The bill, as implemented, was 40-some pages that basically implemented and forces us to take a green building code into January of this coming year. When people realize that that will end development on the Eastern Shore in a meaningful way, they're going to expect people like us to show up in the committee of jurisdiction, which that bill comes through our committee, and fix the bill. The other thing that the Eastern Shore citizens should know, that I'm going to fight for farmers and fight for our watermen. That is an overarching goal for which every other tertiary industry related job on the Eastern Shore starts with agriculture and watermen. And we have to remember that as we're representing people in Annapolis.
Thank you, sir.
My top legislative agenda item, in speaking with the people that I have so far, I think broadband is probably one of the biggest issues, especially in our area when we get down to these rural places where our seniors don't have access to internet and where our children can't school properly because they don't have internet or effective internet. It was hard to pick one, but this one I think really does serve the greater good. I think there's a lot of us who would like to go to our doctor, get our test results, or get our test, come home and find out, hey, look, my test results are right there. I don't have to wait 6 months to go back and see my doctor again. That's a big issue for a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people who don't have internet access and they wait and wait and wait for test results only to find out the test results weren't good and they needed help earlier. Also for education, for children from all socioeconomic backgrounds, it is just important. COVID proved to us that if we didn't have access to the internet, we weren't going to get anything done. The other issue, I think, as far as the broadband is concerned, is job seekers everywhere, especially in our area. We need that internet access because these the people hiring today, our employers, are looking online and they're advertising online.
Thank you, Donna. That was really good comments on the broadband. Broadband is one of my priorities as well, and equitable education is my passion. However, I live healthcare, and when I cannot send a critically ill patient to any hospital, emergency room, or the Shore or Annapolis, which happened last week, and know that they will get timely care, I know what is on the top of my agenda and should be on yours. We must immediately investigate our healthcare workforce. And with the U.S., we lost 500,000 nurses in the last year. They just left the field. We already had a 239,000 primary care physician shortage. Nurse practitioners and physician assistants are in short supply in the emergency room and primary care. We have never had enough mental health providers. So first, we need to establish a commission. What is our current workforce in healthcare, in primary care, in emergency care, in mental health? Where are they? Second, an immediate plan to reallocate the personnel resources to the sites where they are critically needed. Offer incentives, not threats. Third, developing initiatives, laws or regulations to attract and retain the best and brightest in Maryland. But in particular on the Shore, we used to have an extraordinary healthcare system. I think you all can remember that. Staff loved our way of life, our safety, our caring for each other. We must rekindle that in the future and rebuild. So healthcare is my number one before the system completely collapses.
And you get to keep the mic, Susan. And the next question, you get to be the first one to answer. And actually playing off a little bit of Nicole's answer, we're going to jump down. Inflation is hitting Marylanders hard. The price of fuel is going to be a significant hardship, and the 18% increase that's coming in July is only going to make it worse. How do you recommend Maryland legislation respond?
What number is that, please?
It would be 13.
Thank you very much. I had to type all this stuff out. Unlike Chris and Sherry. As a small business owner, I struggle with the results of inflation on all parts of my practice: supplies, pharmaceuticals, payroll. I did note that we are not getting paid any more by the insurers, though we are doing more with less. So there is a disconnect there, and that is a state issue for a delegate. In 2021, earnings increased 5.7%, but inflation rose 8%, so a net loss for the second pandemic year. Key is going to be to balance. If the state or federal government puts more money into the economy, buying goes up, inflation pressure rises. If we adjust our spending, we can weather this. I always like to see what I can do first before I turn to the government. Fuel costs can be reduced by the consumer through decreasing fuel consumption. I can drive 55, decrease numbers of trips, adjust the thermostat, ride the bike to the store. Well, that's 10 miles each way, so that's not going to happen too often in the summer. That will accomplish some savings and less pressure. Then the state can either decrease or delay the gas tax. They are going to have to do that. I did notice in the Wall Street Journal that profits at oil companies are up 50%. How does that figure into our fuel costs and resulting inflation? Focus needs to be directed towards profiteering as well, and that is both a state and federal issue. Thank you.
Me?
Yeah, same question.
Well, I'm sure everybody at this table can relate to this, but running for office in a very, very large district, you put a lot of miles on your car and you go to the gas station a lot. So it's hitting us dramatically, I think, during this election. I believe the General Assembly should have already taken action on this issue by extending the gas holiday, which suspended the gas tax. I believe this should have been extended to at least September. I will propose legislation to repeal the current automatic annual tax increase on gasoline based upon the Consumer Price Index. With inflation out of control, this formula is detrimental to the citizens of Maryland. A new gas tax law needs to be approved, which requires either an annual vote on the increase or an automatic increase with a do not exceed limit.
Well, I'm lucky. I have an electric car. I can go everywhere in the district with no gasoline. But yes, gasoline tax is a big issue in this campaign, and it came from the people that are in there now that could have voted it down. But one thing is, I would at least decrease the percent of gasoline tax, not just gasoline. There was a reprieve on gas tax, but they did nothing on the diesel. Diesel moves their food. It moves everything on the Eastern Shore. You need diesel. We need to take the tax off the diesel. We need a way to decrease the tax on diesel fuel. As far as inflation, I'm all for user taxes. And that means if you have products that poor people use, don't tax them so much. If somebody in my district sells a mink coat to somebody, that means you got enough money to buy a mink coat. Tax those people. Tax the luxury items. Don't tax the everyday items that people in their district need. We are definitely in the poor section of Maryland. Inflation hits us more than everywhere else. So I would do everywhere that I possibly can to decrease the inflation issues on the Eastern Shore.
Thank you. Ironically, Mr. James and my husband would probably be sitting up here doing high fives because my husband complains about the diesel all the time. It is a high price tag on his buses right now. But let me first say this. I supported the tax holiday. I stood there with the governor when he signed the bill, as well with the speaker and the Senate president. And it was a good feeling. It was a good feeling because they had taken the measures to look at what we could do financially as a state at that given time. It was $100 million a month to have the gas tax holiday. So it was proposed to go beyond the 30 days. When that proposal came about, it was in the form of an amendment. At that given time, we had already passed the budget. And none of the presiding officers were in the position to say, hey, what does this look like? What does this look like for the next 6 months? As it was noted, to probably go to September. Financially, can the state handle it? In hindsight, what would have been nice is would have had the conversation about what happens in July, and the statement about possibly looking at that on an annual basis. I actually believe that that might be necessary. What I do know is that the governor had the ability during this period of time, and it's expired now because he let it lapse, but he had the ability to halt that. And to not make that move forward. And so we would not be looking at that increase in July. We did look at making sure that we have tax credits in this budget for those persons who are having diabetes products, blood pressure cuffs, many things, diaper products, and all those types of things that are a burden to our citizens. But we looked at that to address the inflation issue as well.
Nicole, same question.
I would support the legislation to repeal the Maryland gas tax. The issue with the tax holiday is when you have a tax holiday, what happens after that holiday? And we've seen that effect. The current gas tax is based on the inflation rate. And with the 40-year high, the increase translates to a record high of gas prices. Right now, we need to worry about working families and businesses and how they're feeling the pain. How are these families putting food on their table and paying their bills?
So inflation is taxation, and it falls to the least among us to pay this additional burden tax. Maryland is one of the highest tax states in the nation, and it stands to reason that our buying power, especially those that can least afford it, are being affected more so here than region states. It's fair criticism to say that this past legislative session, we passed a tax exemption on toothbrushes, and at the same time did not have the intestinal fortitude to extend for a reasonable amount of time the credit on the gas tax. And so let me just say to you that the caucus that I'm a member of wrote a letter not a week ago asking for us to open a special session, which can happen, and spend an hour to present the bill and pass a bill that gives citizens the relief that they need, considering the fact that we have nearly $2 billion in the rainy day fund. We can do that. So let me just say this on inflation. If we want to be honest with people, if we want to be honest with citizens and voters, let's be honest about where inflation comes from. It comes from governments that spend deficit dollars and they take away the wealth of the citizens by inflation. So to fix it, have legislators win office that understand budgeting, know how to live within the government's means, and make sure that citizens know that the Federal Reserve is doing us no favors when they print paper out of the pretense of helping them.
Inflation's hitting all of us very hard. The state needs to do whatever is necessary to stop the gas increase in July. Consumers simply cannot afford to get hit again. The state also needs to repeal the O'Malley gas error tax being tied to the consumer price index. A couple of people have mentioned how our people are being affected, and I want to tell you a quick little story about a couple that I know who recently bought a house, like in the last 6-8 months. They went through the pre-approval process for their mortgage. They figured out what they could budget. They saved for several years to make sure they could make that down payment. They made sure they moved ahead in their jobs to get the kind of money they needed. They bought a very, very modest house for a big price tag, sadly, on a very small piece of ground. Now, 6 months later, they're wondering, how do I pay for the gas to get to work? How do I pay my electric bill? Am I going to be able to sustain this mortgage? And his property tax assessment shortly after that went up $1,200, adding another $100 a month to their mortgage. It isn't sustainable, and we need to help these young people. What are these other young people going to do when they see this?
All right, Donna, you keep the microphone. You are the next question coming in. And we'll jump back up to the top. So just going to jump around on you guys and make you flip your papers. So we'll go back to number 2. Given the likelihood that the referendum on legalization of recreational cannabis is going to pass in the fall, what are your proposals for the implementation in the state of Maryland?
I'm not sure that I really like the idea of legalizing cannabis. But that being said, that will be up to my constituents. I'm not here to talk about me, or what I think, what I feel. As I learn from my constituents, if that's what they want, then that's up to them. We'll figure it out in November for sure. My feelings on that are simply it must be taxable by the state and the counties. And the counties need to be able to determine how much tax they want to put on it. There needs to be point of sale tracking system, not just showing an ID, but having strict limits on the frequency of purchases. The other day I needed Sudafed. They want my ID. Every time I want Sudafed, they want my ID. Every time I want spray paint, they want my ID. Every time I want cough medicine, they want my ID. If I can show ID to buy those things, they can show ID to buy something that was an illegal drug not too long ago.
I think this is probably going to happen. As a medical professional, I too have my reservations about adding another psychotropic medication, but I think it is going to happen, and I'd suggest we don't reinvent the wheel, model after the state liquor board system, set up state laws on age to purchase, ownership qualifications of dispensary and background investigations, where can distribution centers locate, near schools, churches, etc., employee qualifications and training. Applications go to a local board that makes decisions on state criteria, two-tiered taxing possibilities, state and county. Of course, we do have the big problem that it's still illegal federally, and so the funds that are generated from the sale of these products generally are in cash, and that means there's a lot of cash floating around. So that issue, I think, that we need to take care of before we legalize it completely.
What we have before us in November is a referendum to approve a drug that is currently illegal, an implementation of the program by July 1 of 2023, 7 months after expected approval. As a businessman, I find this to be an unreasonable timeframe to implement an initiative of this magnitude. While I'm not a proponent of government regulations, I recognize the introduction of adult recreational cannabis is a major initiative that will need careful planning and oversight to ensure it's properly implemented to protect our residents, our children, and employers from issues that will result in the legalization of cannabis. Therefore, my focus will include the following. 1, oversight. Currently, we have the Medical Cannabis Commission under the Department of Health and a separate commission for alcohol and tobacco. Today, there's discussion of rolling everything under alcohol and tobacco, yet they are not large enough to or fully prepared for the magnitude of this initiative. Licensing and access. Who will be eligible to apply and what will be the approval process? Employee and employer protection. How will employers be protected in the event of use on the job, but also protect employees from discrimination during an interview process? Public safety. How will law enforcement be able to determine someone is under the influence and what penalties for misuse and driving impaired? Marketing. How and where will products be marketed, particularly the edibles, which may catch the attention of children and young adolescents? And finally, public health. What additional behavioral health resources will be needed to address addiction?
Well, everybody always said, this can't be a hard job. Listen to what everybody says and do it. So if everybody says it's going to be legal, I've got to go along with it. I think we already have in place the way to bring it in to the mainstream. We have pharmacies in every town here in their counties. They sell marijuana products with a prescription. The only difference will be selling marijuana products without a prescription for recreational use. These pharmacies can be made to control the sale and distribution of marijuana until the state can come up with a reasonable plan, probably under the alcohol, tobacco part of the state, the way we do cigarettes and alcohol. But if they want to bring it on right away, we have the pharmacies. They could sell it legally without a prescription, and that way it could be legal. And if that's what the people want, well, that's what the people get. Don't use it myself, but I have friends that do, and they swear by it.
Well, serving in leadership as the Speaker Pro Temp in the House of Delegates, I was glad I had a seat at the table to echo my concerns with legalization. And probably about 2 years ago, I was just sharing with the Speaker. I said, "Look, we need to make this a referendum because this is important for the citizens to make the decisions for themselves, just as we did with the gaming industry and so many other things." And so, to that end, you have it on the ballot in November. With that being said, we could not move the needle forward in putting it on the ballot without having the discussion and putting forth a bill with implementation. In that implementation process, it does include the creation of an advisory council, similar to what we did with the medical cannabis, but then also looking at, in this case, expungements, looking at resentencing for those who are incarcerated for marijuana, and then also looking at it from the specific side of being in the industry, making sure that a disparity study is done, all of those things that came along with medical cannabis. And personally, I believe that, our state is still in the infancy stages of dealing with medical cannabis, while some areas are thriving and doing extremely well, but we have some areas that aren't. And so it's a little, taken back that we're moving in this direction now. But, when you have policy before you, you have to deal with it and you have to figure out how to make it work and do the best. So we'll see in November as to what we'll come out with. But yeah, at the same token, I have grave concerns about, where we go forward with it.
Thank you. Nicole, same question.
Thank you. First and foremost, I do not support the legalization of recreational drug use. But if this does pass, I think, there's some things that we need to look at how we are going to use the tax revenue. It's going to be needed to mitigate the unintended consequences, such as drug addiction and recovery, mental health services, and most importantly, how we support newborn babies that are addicted to illegal drugs. Law enforcement officers will need to be trained in drug recognition, and there will need to be very, very clear laws in what's considered public and private use, making sure that we educate the public in what recreational use will bring. If you have a license to carry a concealed weapon, you will not be able to use recreational marijuana.
So before I articulate my proposals, let me just start by saying that I oppose legalizing marijuana, and I voted consistently on this particular point. First off, the reason why we're legalizing marijuana is to generate tax revenue. We're going to legalize it and tax the living daylights out of it, which means we're still going to have the black market with marijuana that could be laced with fentanyl, which is a major problem for us on the Eastern Shore and throughout the state. People get hurt and people die from overdoses. And proposal number one is to make sure that the state holds strong the laws that relate to the black market in marijuana. If we're going to legalize it, then do it like California, make it super expensive, make it pure, whatever you're going to do. Make sure that citizens understand that the black market can't be allowed. The second thing, and the point was brought a minute ago, make sure that before we make it legal, that law enforcement can identify through technology that may or may not be available today, whether somebody driving on our roads is or is not under the influence of marijuana. We have to have safe roads. There are states like Colorado that have behavioral tests, but are they really able to tell whether somebody's driving under the influence like they are with alcohol? And that's a major problem. The last proposal is one that comes from my committee of jurisdiction, Economic Matters. Get ready, the state of Maryland, to vastly increase the funding to workers' comp, because people are going to come to work with saws, machines, forklifts are going to go to manufacturing facilities, and they're going to get hurt, and it's going to cost somebody something in a workplace. So before you do it, get ready for those kind of costs to be borne on employers in the state.
And you get to keep the mic, Chris. And the next question is coming to you. A couple of you guys already touched on this, so I'm going to jump down to number 7, which is the Kerwin question. So how do you see Kerwin impacting Dorchester County schools, and what can be done to improve schools in our county?
So Kerwin's tough. I opposed the bill because we knew when the bill passed that the broad expansion, the heavy costs were going to be sent to the counties that could least afford it in the form of an unfunded mandate. Our own Superintendent Bromwell, this legislative session, sent emails to all of us with deep concerns about the funding proposals that were being sent forward, for which they were saying to the county, Dorchester, we're going to raise teacher salaries to $60,000 and then increases from there. But they're not showing us the funding in the disparity counties that can least afford these things. That was what Kerwin was supposed to fix. The Thornton formulas were flawed. They were difficult in certain areas of the state. We wanted to have fair, equitable educational outcomes vis-a-vis funding. Kerwin, at least now, doesn't do that. And the problem with Kerwin is it takes away local control and autonomy from the school boards of education, where decisions need to be made, where people and the teachers and the parents are closest to those that make those decisions. Right now, we have a state accountability board that's taking that away from the citizens. I oppose Kerwin on a lot of reasons, but not least of which is the idea that local Eastern Shore counties should stand up and say no to these unfunded mandates and yes to keeping control at the county level and making sure that even if we have to pay these dollars in an unfunded way, that we control how that money gets spent.
Kerwin's Commission Blueprint for Maryland's Future Act, nice name, had some seriously lofty ideas, which I didn't get any ideas as to how they intended to implement these. The price tags were huge. Didn't see how that money was coming from anywhere in particular. We're just going to kind of pull it out of the air and hope that we can fund these things. It looks like it's going to increase the county's mandated money to the schools by just an insurmountable amount. And I just don't see where we're going to be able to make this work. Are we going to take the money away from emergency services, public safety? I mean, the county budget's only stretched so far. If we're going to improve the schools in our county, it's only going to occur when we give parents back the right to be involved in all aspects of school administration, including curriculum, when the teachers are allowed to teach again. And I mean the basics, the fundamentals that kids need, not how to take a test. And administrators are given back their ability to discipline, because there is no possibility of learning without discipline. And let's try bringing God and the Pledge of Allegiance back too.
By the way, the Kerwin Commission has now become the Blueprint for Maryland. That is its official name. Governor Hogan commissioned Dr. Brett Kerwin to develop a plan to make Maryland schools' performance ratings in the top 10 in the world. This commission worked diligently in order to put forward really some amazing things in order to put us where we should be. I'm going to give you a brief overview, and I know I'm going to overdo the time, so I'll just shut up when you raise the thing. First, full day free early education is expanded to most 3 and 4-year-olds. High quality and diverse teacher and leaders through more stringent education standards and evaluations, and paying teachers as the professionals that they are. Number 3, improve college and career readiness. Make sure pathways are clear and open to all in an equitable manner. 4, more resources dedicated to ensure students are successful. That means addressing the health and social aspects of learning, putting in place math and reading coaches, English as a second language teacher, social workers, mental health workers. 70% of Dorchester students qualify for free or reduced meals, breakfast and lunch. Hungry, tired, stressed children do not learn up to their potential. There's also a governance board. The actual legislation is obviously considerably longer than that. The Board of Education is usually the biggest chunk of any county's budget. If we are going to invest in our kids, our future, then we all have to get on board. Businesses, for instance, like Mr. Rideout wrote about a March for the Moving, and my time is up. But the point is, this is our future. These children are our future. We have to invest in them. We have to put the money forward, and it is done in an equitable manner. Thank you.
On face value, the Blueprint for Maryland was intended to level the playing field for all school systems across the state. Its intentions were admirable to make Maryland schools among the top 10 programs in the world. Unfortunately, the reality has set in. It was a lofty goal, and as Chris mentioned, it then had an unfunded mandate. Initially, during the pandemic and the influx of money, during that period, Dorchester County schools fared well. Since then, reality has set in, and both Dorchester County as well as Caroline County schools are struggling to meet the requirements of Kerwin. I had the opportunity to meet with Superintendent Dave Bromwell recently. According to Dave, Kerwin legislation was approved, yet the formula for allocation of funds has not changed. Thus, while the larger Western Shore school systems are faring well, Dorchester County is struggling. This year, Dave needed to eliminate 6 positions just to get to a 2% pay raise. He needs to be at least 4 to 5% to get to that threshold of $60,000 by 2025. To get back on track, Dave predicts that he would need to eliminate 30 to 40 positions within the school system. So to answer your question, Bill, Kerwin is negatively impacting Dorchester County schools.
Ron, you're next.
Okay, I don't agree with the Kerwin bill either. Like I said before, the Eastern Shore is poor. Every county I've talked to has had to redo their school budgets to comply with the Kerwin Act. It was, like she said, 141 delegates, very few from the Eastern Shore. Evidently, we're having to listen to what the Western Shore is telling us to do. We can't do it on the Eastern Shore. We need more home rule schooling. Our local school boards know better to what is going on in the Eastern Shore schools than the people over in Washington or Calvert County. We need more county approval to what's being taught and what's being spent on the schools. If the state wants these money in the Kerwin bill, let it trickle back down to the poor counties. We need the money here. We need a good education system on the Eastern Shore.
Thank you. So the blueprint for Maryland, yes, it has its concerns, but it also has its positives in it as well. When we talk about investing in our future, it does require money. You talk about it being a lofty goal. We were able to fund the goal. We did that, and we're doing that. And 59.2 million is coming to Dorchester County from the state. Our constitutional requirement and commitment is to fund education. If we don't do anything else in Annapolis, that's the one thing we're required to do. With that being said, the blueprint for Maryland speaks to helping with the special needs population in our schools, addressing some of the needs that the teachers have echoed over time. We can't have it both ways. We can talk about that. We want an educated workforce. How do you not prepare our future? That was probably grammatically incorrect, but you have to prepare our future with information and education. We want our healthcare system to be stellar. We have a new hospital here in Dorchester County. That's fine. I'll keep talking. But Somerset and Dorchester County, yes, they are some of our poorest counties in the state of Maryland. But we have a seat at the table. I have a seat at the table, and I'm going to continue to make that voice heard. And we do have disparity grants that comes to our poorer counties, Wycomico County being one of them. And so we have to fight for that. It's not always given, but it's something we're fighting for, and it's going to continue to fight and to work with our superintendents when they have concerns about their budgets. I'm going to continue to do that.
Send all the way down this way. So we'll get one going again here. We're assuming the battery went out. Nicole, same question.
Okay, thank you. So working in local government, we're going through this pain right now. And my thought on Kerwin is if the state legislator would like to mandate these programs, not just the funding, but the programs, then they need to fund the programs. Dorchester County does not have the tax base to implement these requirements. And the county commissioners really need to be mindful of that moving forward. Throwing money at a problem is not a solution. If you want to improve education, you need to get student discipline under control. It is an issue here and nationwide. Students cannot learn in that type of environment, and teachers cannot teach in that kind of an environment. We need to make sure teachers have the resources to teach and they feel supported. And parents need to be part of the education process. There is a serious distrust in our public school systems, and that is helping no one right now. The thing that bothers me the most about Kerwin is there is an appointed board that oversees your elected school board to make sure that that's implemented. Your elected school board answers to the people, not an appointed board.
And you get to keep the mic for the next question. The applause are fine. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. And can you please detail this is number 9, by the way, detail your position for renewable energy sources in the state, including large solar farms and wind energy?
Can I trade with Chris on this one? Renewable energy is not going to replace fossil fuel. Um, this renewable energy, this needs to be driven by the free market. It should be something done by the private sector. The other concern I have are these large solar farms that are used for large utilities. This takes away from our valuable farmland. We need this land for food production, and as agriculture is the economic driver and the backbone of the Eastern Shore.
So the problem that we have with renewable energy is that the legislature wants offshore wind, it wants solar, but it also thinks it's going to be able to get baseload reliable production of energy when it happens. And so we in the Economic Matters Committee have fought to hold and preserve our nuclear energy production at Calvert Cliffs. It's important to the extent that we're going to advocate for these non-traditional and very unreliable forms of energy to be used. The other problem that we have in the Public Service Commission and our committee has taken away some of the local control and consideration of land use decisions in solar. Let me just say this to you. I'm for a landowner who has 200 or 300 acres of land who would like to take their land and turn it into solar. However, there is comprehensive plans. There are local decision-making bodies that make those decisions for the community and the county at large. The state wants to take that away. And why? Because we have clear-cut, level land that makes it very easy to put solar projects throughout the Eastern Shore. If we do that, we harm our future of farming because poultry depends on the grains that are produced here. And you can't just take solar and throw it everywhere on the Eastern Shore. The other thing that I've strongly opposed is offshore wind, and here's why. They could have had their offshore wind policy if O'Malley wasn't going for president. They could have done it by sending it far enough miles offshore so you can't see it. The reason why it's not put up today as we speak is because of the arrogance of elected officials in Annapolis who didn't listen to the local decision makers in Ocean City on the Eastern Shore as it relates to these projects. Keep these decisions local.
This will not be my forte, I'm afraid, but I've done a little research, and here's how I feel about this. Wind and solar are not full-time reliable energy sources. We're not going to get away from fossil fuels, but we do need to find a way to make some of this stuff a little cheaper. With regard to solar farms, I have to go back to the property rights of the farmers. If it is within their zoning and in accordance with what the county wants, and this is the ones who are doing this so far have taken land where they can't irrigate and they can't grow anything of any substance. And with the prices of everything going up, the fertilizer, the seed, and the fuel, they can't afford to put a disc in the ground anymore. So sometimes solar looks good in that regard. Wind energy, I'm completely against that. I think it's going to have more of a negative impact on our seafood industry and tourism because it is unsightly. I don't think we'll see any returns from that in the future. It's going to have more of an impact on the flight patterns of birds as well as the seafood industry. And again, if the wind doesn't blow, it's not doing us any good. I think that we don't talk about the other renewable energy source that's considerably underutilized, which is woody biomass. It's extremely effective for combination heat and power generation, and it's carbon neutral. As the trees are harvested and replanted, the younger trees have more capability for absorbing the carbon from the atmosphere, so that makes it much better for us as we live in this area.
Thank you. As usual, I have too much to say and not enough time to say it, so I'm going to really make this succinct. I firmly believe in renewable energy. I believe also in the nuclear, and I think we have potential here to expand that. Over the past decades, solar power has become inexpensive, and the solar packs, usually it took about 30 years for them to be reimbursed, but at this point, it's 1 to 5 years. We have every roof in this area should be able to maintain solar panels at this point. At this time also, we have Johns Hopkins generates electricity. In Queenstown, Chesapeake College has installed 2.5 megawatts of solar that supply much of its campus electricity needs. Eastern Utility runs its entire wastewater treatment plant on a new 10-acre solar field, and local farms are supplying all of their electric needs with new solar installations. I think we have to look at the reality. We have to have renewable energy sources that are not going to continue to deteriorate our environment. Every day when I get up, I have to make a decision at the end of the road. Do I turn left or do I turn right? And the reason I look at that is because how high is the water up in the road? These are serious questions for us. And so we need to look at things that are not going to affect climate change any further and are going to help preserve the entire area of the Eastern Shore. Thank you.
I agree with Nicole that I don't believe that renewable energy sources will replace fossil fuels. Provided there's an appropriate return on investment, I am supportive, though, of renewable energy sources. Wind has already made its presence known in the mountains of Western Maryland and most likely off the shore of Ocean City, which I oppose. I would, however, like to see a true return on the cost of building, maintaining, operating, and disposing of wind turbines, as is taken into full consideration for its true impact on the environment when evaluating wind options. Solar is making an impact on residential homes and in solar fields. While I would rather see farmland be used for productive farming, I'm a property rights advocate as well, and I would not limit a property owner who would want to turn his or her field into a solar. However, as I talk to most farmers out there, those that are functioning, operating, say that they can make a lot more money farming than just selling their fields for solar power. I personally benefited from the reduced energy costs by installing 2 geothermal HVA systems in my home, and I was able to do so because of the tax credits, and I would want to see those tax credits continue. And I would also like to see what can be done with biomass. Can we convert more wood waste, municipal solid waste into energy? Can we harvest more landfill biogas and gases? And can we produce more ethanol and biodiesel fuels? Thank you.
I am all in favor of renewable energy. People have said they want to shut down Calvert Cliffs. Inspections have proven that Calvert Cliffs is safe for generations to come. One of the cleanest form of energies that's already here. We can't start a nuclear plant right now. If we did, it would take at least 40 years before it would go into operation. People talk about wind farms. People are against them because of the birds. I've been in wind farms in California that have thousands of turbines. There's not hundreds of birds laying there dead underneath them. The birds are smarter than that. When the electric came out, people said, we can't string up wires. The birds will hit them. If we didn't have electric lines, the birds wouldn't have any place to sit nowadays. I'm all against solar farms. It would be the first farm I ever heard of that didn't generate food. They can't call them farms. They want to call them farms so they could get a tax break. It takes away farmland, takes away the valuable land we have on the Eastern Shore. That's why they all want to come here. They tax farms cheap on the Eastern Shore, and there's wide open property. Let's go make it a solar plant, a solar industry. Don't call it a solar farm and tax it cheap. Don't use air farmland. Put solar on top of buildings, not in the farm fields.
So I think it's important for us to diversify our portfolio. I mean, it's just natural that we need to do that. Case in point, in going around the district and talking to citizens, they're trying to do their part. I know one gentleman, he has geothermal in his home, as was mentioned, but he also just installed the solar panels as well, and trying to, you know, put take his part of the process to make sure our environment is a lot cleaner. Just recently, we had the natural gas line pipe go down from Wycomico to Dorchester County. That's better than the oil that was being used. And so Eastern Correctional Institute now is operating off of natural gas, as well as University of Maryland Eastern Shore, as well as their industrial park. Now they have businesses that are coming there again to support the poorest county in the state. So I'm supportive of renewable energy because we have a climate change issue. That's why I mentioned early on about the bill that deals with resiliency. It's a conversation and it's a must have across this entire state and more so in our area. And so that's why I'm supportive of it, because I know what we need to do and what we can do to get to that point with solar, wind, as well as our solar panels and nuclear energy as well.
All right. And Sri, the next question is yours. And this will be the last question, just based on where we're at. And then we get through this one, then we'll be preparing to do the 2-minute wrap ups. Time goes by when you're having fun, right? All right. So this question deals with infrastructure. So infrastructure within the state has deteriorated significantly since the changes in the allocation of highway user funds. It's great that some of those funds are returning to local control, but the amounts allocated fall way short of those needed to address the issues that exist because of that original change. How do you propose to reduce the backlog of work that has built up over time?
So I guess what we also, when we're on this conversation of renewable energy and diversification and doing things, we need to have that conversation about the electric vehicles. Because if we're going to talk about the Transportation Trust Fund and talk about the revenue that provides the money to make our roads better, then it's a part of the conversation. So this upcoming session, Senator Hershey from the Eastern Shore, as well as delegate from Montgomery County, they're working together, try to figure out what that looks like. Because right now we have about 40,000 electric vehicles in this state, and there's a goal to get to 300,000. And so if you do that, then we need to figure out where does that income come from to help with the highway user revenue. This year, we were able to, again, put more money into the Highway User Revenue Fund because we know the importance of our roadways and making sure that we have a streamlined approach to make those improvements. And that is extremely important. That's why every year the Eastern Shore delegation and the county council here in Dorchester meet about the projects. And we hear from the public if that makes sense to move forward in that fashion. So, in that same vein, it's important for us to know where our revenue comes from, but then also make sure that we're ahead of the game to get those projects underway. And with the federal infrastructure and funding that came down, we're able to move the needle on a lot of these projects as well. So to that end, I'll continue to support those.
Nicole, same question.
So the highway user funds, I think, when you're looking at the overall picture and how they're dispersed, just making sure it's adjusted by the areas with the greatest need and that they're dispersed fairly throughout the state. Dorchester County has the highest number of county roads in the state of Maryland. And are they adequately supported? Are they getting the funding they need to maintain them? We also need to have a comprehensive plan to maintain our ditches, to make sure there's proper drainage so we don't have continued roadway erosion. Having experience in local government, I intend to work closely with the county to make sure that they're able to prioritize and work with the state highway department for any technical support that they can offer.
So lest we not forget what happened in the past so we don't repeat it again, under the O'Malley administration, their administration raided the highway user revenue funds, which are the monies that come from the gas tax to help pay for local county roads projects like filling potholes, repaving roads, the basics, fixing the bridges. And so we never really got back to where we were when the administration did that. This past year, I was proud to co-sponsor the legislation that the Speaker Pro Tem referenced, which brought the funding back in a reasonable fashion. And Dorchester County will benefit from that piece of legislation. The legislature did the right thing at the time. So the charge and the opportunity for a legislator going into the next session and the next handful of sessions is to be smart about what highway user revenues are, how important those dollars are for the local counties, especially Dorchester County, especially on the comments made by my predecessor that we have so many of these rural county roads that have been dilapidated, lacking the type of basic improvements that us as citizens want. We want safe roads. We want roads that are reliable roads. We want roads that that we can depend on. And so these dollars do just that. So I'll close in saying that I was proud to support that legislation. It was key legislation that really gets us back to where we were. Let's hold that funding level in the years coming forward. That's my commitment to you here in Dorchester County.
To piggyback off what Chris just said, I understand that we're looking at in Dorchester County at getting possibly somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million for the next couple of years, and then it's going to fall back off again unless the legislators do something about that. Dorchester County has 633 miles of road. We used to get $4 million a year, which was completely earmarked for those roads. We used to have 50 people on our roads department. We used to be able to pave our own roads. We used to be able to tar and chip it ourselves. Now we have to contract it out. 1 mile of asphalt is $150,000. It's a ridiculous price when you look at 633 miles. It's hard to get all of that done. I'd like to see the highway user funds never, ever again being diverted into general funds. And there needs to be a lock on the transportation trust fund. It has to go for that purpose. We're thrilled that the lawmakers have helped us and are giving us back some of that money. With some of these added resources, we can hire some extra road maintenance employees and possibly contract out some of the work, but we're going to be years getting ahead of some of these roads, and we could quite possibly lose some roads in our county.
Well, it sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement on this. One of the questions was, how do we prioritize it? And I think we need to go back and look at throughout the midshore area. We have to reassess what is going on. There are places that were high use that aren't high use now, places that have been affected by water and erosion that are going to be higher priority than ones that weren't. We have to look at those where we're getting higher traffic and grade each of these projects. We must remember that 5 out of 6 road miles in Maryland are local government maintained. That's why it's so important that we do not let anyone rob the Highway Trust Fund. These are county decisions on what needs to be done, but funding from Annapolis has to be maintained. But we do remember that these funds include broadband, roads, culverts, bridges, airports, ports, electric car chargers, electric buses, safety, rail, etc. So there's more things in the pot than there have been previously, and that has to be put into the calculus of how we're going to manage and maintain. Just very briefly, but the Build Back Better program, Maryland's going to get $844 million over 5 years to improve our water infrastructure across the state, including our ports, and another $238 million to restore the health of and reclaim the bay, and that's considered part of that.
In 2021, the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was passed. We need to ensure that the funds from this act are fairly being distributed to the state of Maryland, and more importantly, that the funds are being distributed to the counties and not necessarily just based upon population. In District 37B, we carry a significant burden by having low populations, large land mass, and thousands of miles of state roads and bridges that need to be maintained. I believe that we need to address the Highway User Fund and return it to its original intention, to be allocated solely to infrastructure and not to fund other unrelated general projects. I'll support and approve on the legislation that Chris mentioned, and I will fight for more money to be allocated for our highways.
Kudos to this year's Senate and House. They did get some highway user funds back to the counties where they should be. Was it enough? No, because of the lack of user funds in prior years, the roads have deteriorated greatly. We need to get with the highway departments and let them prioritize what roads need to be maintained. And not only the roads, the ditches, walkways, streams, culverts, bridges, it all needs to come out of this small amount of money that we have been approved for this year. So I believe the priority should come from the roads department, since they're the ones that know which roads need the most work, where they're going out, repairing the most often, seeing where the potholes are, hearing the citizens' complaints. It all comes down to the roads department. That's what should be the priority section for the highway user funds.
And Ron, you can keep the mic. Just for luck of the draw, you started us off. You're going to finish this as well. So now for you guys, you have 2 minutes. This is really 2 minutes for you to say anything you didn't get a chance to say during the question and answer. If there's a question I didn't ask, you want to address, you can do that. But your chance to tell the voters why they should be voting for you and any other issues about you. So your 2-minute wrap up. And Ron, you get to go first just because of how the questions rolled out.
Well, my 2-minute wrap up is I didn't have a lot of resource materials everyone else did up here. So you heard it off the cuff, the way I feel about things. It was often said by a gentleman that he learned everything he needed in life in kindergarten. I don't think it was quite that way with me, but I did learn everything I needed to know in life in Boy Scouts. I'm trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And I go by the Boy Scout motto. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Thank you.
Again, I'd like to close with just saying thank you for the opportunity to serve as your member for District 37A in the House of Delegates. It certainly has been an honor, and I am interested, obviously, to continue in that same capacity. It's been an opportunity to make a lot of inroads, and I say that because I have proven it so. I have worked diligently within the committee of jurisdiction that I serve on, but then also beyond that. Serving as the Speaker Pro Temp in the House has certainly opened my eyes to putting out fires in the House of Delegates as needed for the Speaker. But with that being said, having the opportunity to have that voice at the table, making sure the Eastern Shore is heard. When I sponsored the bill in 2020, the Eastern Shore Broadband Act, it was worth the fight. And I say fight because everybody was not on the same page. I know from hearing from citizens of sitting in the parking lot at McDonald's and using the internet to try to do their kids' homework, we had to do something about it. But we also know that it was going to take a while for us to get there. And it passed in 2020, and we're moving the needle forward on every county on the Eastern Shore. I also know that the sponsorship of the Maryland Loan Assistance Repayment Program, where it helps persons who are in the healthcare space, so we can retain those specialty positions as far as doctors that we might need that are not here in Dorchester or Wycomico County, that they can be able to pay back their loans because they're working in the communities that they serve. And they are in the trenches. They're doing the work. So that's why I'm excited to continue to fight for the needs of the Eastern Shore and have that voice at the table, because I understand, I know the needs, and I'm going to continue to do that. In closing, it certainly is up to the voters. And it's up to the voters to decide whether or not you still want a voice from Cherie Sample Hughes or not. But I will say this, is that I have been a fighter and will continue to be a fighter, whatever way this turns. Thank you.
Cool.
I just want to touch on question 12 because I think this is what I get the most questions from citizens in the district, is the critical race theory question. And if it's a polarizing topic. Yes, it is a polarizing topic. Some believe it's real, others believe it's the downfall of our society. Regardless, I plan on working with our local schools to ensure that every child has an opportunity to be successful, whether that means learning a trade or attending college. We need to focus on mastering reading, writing, and arithmetic, not racism and resentment. Our children are dramatically below grade level, and if we're concerned about recruiting physicians or professionals to come to the Eastern Shore, this is the reason why. We've had education issues in our public school systems way before COVID, so that is not an excuse. We are graduating kids that can barely read or write a sentence. How will we make them productive members of society? We need to start by teaching students American history, the United States and Maryland Constitution. Students need to know where their rights come from and the powers of the federal, state, and local government. My tenure on the Wycomico County Council has provided greater insight on how government, including state government, affects citizens locally. It has confirmed and strengthened my view that government must be carefully controlled to promote, not destroy, our constitutional rights. I've seen over the past 8 years how reactive instead of proactive dilutes the powers of the people. If elected, I plan not to sit back and wait, but lead the charge. Thank you.
So let me start by saying in 2014, when I was first elected, I can tell you how fortunate I am to have had Johnny Mouts, a friend of mine, teach me the ropes, how to be politically savvy, how to develop friends and relationships to get things done in Annapolis. And fortunate to have Senator Addie Eckhart, who was nothing short of my mentor over these 8 years, not because she was telling me how to do things, but I watched how she got things done, how she was able to deliver budget priorities, funding resources to this community in Dorchester County. I have no position on the Senate race other than to say I think we're fortunate to have two people willing to put their name forward and serve in that capacity in the People's Chamber and the House of Delegates. I am fine being a fighter and a rubber rouser and deliver results for you, the citizens in the state of Maryland. I can tell you that when I stand on the House floor and speak, I do it concisely, and I can tell that my voice is being heard. Last year, we had the bill debate on the family medical leave bill, and after my speech, the chairman of my committee, C.T. Wilson, came over to me and said, hand me your homework there. We're going to try to adopt some of the things that you talked about today on the House floor, which they did. As a voice for you in Annapolis, it's important that you understand that as a Republican, I can't give you 30 or 40 bills that I've passed, but I can give you 30 or 40 that I've killed. And I can give you at least another 30 or 40 that I've had a direct involvement in my committee on the House floor in amending those and making them workable so we have clear, bright line paths to compliance with the law, which is important. If we're going to pass a law, make it fair. And so I'm asking for your vote because I'm the most experienced legislator on the ballot in the House of Delegates that can deliver, knows how to deliver for you in Annapolis. I was the legislator of the year for the Maryland Retailers Association. At a time at the height of our pandemic, the statewide association, who could have given it to a Republican or a Democrat, said, Chris Adams, you are the one that we watched fight for us and make meaningful change in Annapolis. That's why I ran for a third term, because I can do this job, and I want to ask for your vote to continue doing that work in Annapolis.
I thank you all for being here. I look forward to the fight going ahead. I am excited for everything that I have to learn to live up to what these guys know already. I find that it's a very interesting process, but I think we need some common sense legislation. I think common sense has gone out the window, and I want to bring Christian ethics and common sense thinking to some government that I think may have gone a little haywire. I ask for your vote in the primary as well as the general. I hope that you will encourage everyone you know to get out. I know it's not a presidential race, so we have lower voter turnout, but we really need to encourage people to get out there because the issues that are before us right now are critical, especially for our kids, our safety, and our, frankly, some of our livelihoods. And thank you again.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to the members of the Chamber, the Realtor Board, SPY, and any others that provided this opportunity for us. It's my goal to continue to work for the best health care we can provide at the price that we can afford. It's my also to continue to push for the best, most equitable education system we can provide to maintain high safety standards in the whole Midshore. I stand with our farmers to ensure that we maintain our heritage and encourage young people to continue in farming by providing incentives, grants, and best practice incentives. I will work with our watermen, our boat builders, our aquaculture teams to develop solutions to the problems on the bay. With that as a base, we will attract clean energy businesses that pays wages and benefits that our citizens deserve. We will be able to build and maintain safe and affordable housing, and with that healthy education base, we will make solid decisions on how we are to grow and develop for our benefit, for your benefit, for our children and our grandchildren's benefit, preserving the Midshore character and setting an example for the others. I just want you to remember that giving each child a pair of shoes is equality, but giving each child a pair of shoes that fits is equity. And that's what I strive for in everything that I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share my position on a number of important issues. When I go about this evening talking to people or out and about, people ask me how the campaign's going. And I want to really tell you, I'm having a great time. This has been one of the best things I've ever done because I get out and I hear the issues from Caroline to Talbot through Dorchester to the west side of Wacomico. I'm meeting new people and hearing what their issues are, and I look forward to serving them. I would also like to thank everybody that's sitting here at this table who's running for office in District 37. I've learned a lot this evening, and I appreciate the time and effort that we're all putting forth to make a difference. I respect all of you. In closing, I would like to reiterate that when elected, I will focus on economic development and job creation. I will improve public safety and crime reduction. I will support law enforcement and first responders every day unequivocally. I will protect small businesses, our watermen, our farmers from unnecessary regulations and taxations. I will ensure that parents have a final voice in what is taught in our schools and that local school boards have the power to make local decisions. I will defend our Constitution and fight against any efforts to infringe upon the Second Amendment. I will expand broadband. I will reduce and eliminate taxes and fees. And most importantly, I will preserve the values of the Eastern Shore. I ask for your vote so that together we can make a beautiful place to live even better. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. A round of applause for the group tonight. So I'm sure they're going to stick around and be willing to answer some additional questions for you folks that are in the room for a few more minutes. A couple of them touched on it. We're doing these before the primaries because the primaries are important. They are happening on July 19th, which is about the worst possible time you could actually have a primary. But that's kind of what we ended up with. Early voting starts on July 9th. We encourage everyone to vote. You guys here clearly are interested in this. We need you to share this with everyone else. The videos are available. Take the video, find something that one of these candidates said that you loved or hated. I don't care which. Send that to somebody and say, go to, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And I haven't watched this. I have no idea. Was it 4 minutes, 30 seconds yet? But go to that part of the tape and watch it and see if you can get 1, 2, 5, 10 folks to watch this so that they can become informed voters. That's what we need. If we don't make good decisions about who we put in office, then we get what we get. So make sure that that's why we're having these sessions. We had 3 last week. We got 2 this week. We got 2 more next week. We're trying to get as many candidates we can in front of you and make it available online. So again, share that information, get out. And again, these folks have all of them have their emails posted online. If you have questions that didn't get answered tonight, email them. I mean, it's out there. It's online. Go get it. Send the question to them. I'm sure they'd be glad to answer it for you. I truly believe, I know most of them, some of them I just met tonight, but many of them I've known for a while. And I'm pretty sure that they all want to hear what you guys have to say, or they wouldn't be running for office. Because I have no idea why anybody wants to run for office, quite honestly. But but thank you for doing so. And again, with that, we are going to close out tonight. Again, appreciate you guys all coming. I'm sure the candidates will be more than willing to take some more questions from the crowd at home. Thank you for watching. Again, share this with as many people as you can. Have a good night, folks.